Thanks very much, John. So firstly, welcome everyone on behalf of the Planning Department of Kilkenny County Council. Thanks very much for coming out on such a lovely evening. My name is Katrina O'Sullivan. I'm in the Planning Department, as I said, and I'm one of a team of 4 that are going to be developing reviewing the development plans and preparing the new development plan for the period 2020 to 2026. So there's myself, Katrina O'Sullivan, there's Amy Granville as well at the door. Some of you may have signed in with her. We have Nicholas Lowe and then Dennis Malone, and also our director here this evening, Sean McKeown. So I'm just going to run through tonight very briefly, just give you the overview of why we're here and what the purpose of this evening is. So what is a development plan and why does it matter? What is the process and the purpose of this meeting here tonight, and how that's going to feed into the process from here on. So to frame the development plan in a policy context, at the national level, you may all have heard about the recently published National Planning Framework. That was published in February of this year, and that now replaces what was called the National Spatial Strategy. So that's at the very top of the tree. Next down at regional level is what's going to be called the Regional Spatial and Economic Strategy, and that's in preparation at the moment. We don't even have a draft yet, but the figures and the policies and the context of that regional document will then influence the shaping of our development plan, which is then at a local level. And then the development plan locally sits above local area plans. So some of you, I know, might have heard of the Ferrybank Bellevue local area plan, which was recently adopted. So that fits at a level below the development plan. So we're reviewing 2 plans. So previously there were 2 planning authorities. There was the Borough Council in the city and the Kilkenny County Council. And as of 1st of June 2014, the Borough Council was dissolved. So we are now going to review those 2 plans and shape one consolidated county development plan that will include all the policies and objectives and all the content that was previously contained within the City and Environment Development Plan within this new one document. So what is a development plan? In general, it's strategic in outlook. It's the main instrument for control of development. So what does that mean? That means when any planning application enters Kilkenny County Council Planning Department, the first thing the planner will do to assess that application is to pull out the development plan and see what the policies and the objectives are in relation to that application. So say Declan here would be talking about wind energy, solar farms. All of those policies will be contained within the new development plan, and are already, a version of them is already contained within the existing development plan 2014 to 2020. And it also has a very important role, obviously, in protecting the environment and heritage. So as well as the development plan itself, it will be accompanied by 3 very significant environmental documents. One being the Strategic Environmental Assessment of the Development Plan, which will set out how the policies and objectives of the Development Plan will affect the environment and what we're doing to mitigate against those. Secondly, it will be accompanied by an appropriate assessment, which is an assessment of the Development Plan and its impacts on European designated sites for heritage. And thirdly then, a strategic flood risk assessment, which assesses the policies and objectives in the development plan against for flood risk, to make sure that the development plan doesn't lead to any increase in flood risk. So one of the main elements of a development plan is what's called a core strategy. And really what that means is it's a settlement hierarchy. So it sets out at county level what the settlements are and what their role is. And each then role or tier in the settlement hierarchy will have a different level of influence, I suppose, or weighting attached to it. So say at the top of the hierarchy, we'd have the 2 urban centres of Kilkenny City and Ferrybank being part of the Waterford City area. And then the next level down is the district towns. So we've 4 district towns. We've Callan, Castlecomer, Thomastown and Graig. And then below that again then are smaller towns and villages. So the core strategy is influenced very much by what comes through the National Planning Framework down to the Regional Spatial and Economic Strategy And that then feeds into an amount of land, or a population allocation really, that Kilkenny County can provide for. And we then look at that population allocation and we translate that into an area of land required to provide the housing units to meet that population target. So we're not just coming up with this in a vacuum, it's an evidence-based strategy for the zoning of land, and that's very much influenced by the regional, spatial and economic strategy. So that's one of the most important elements of a development plan. So just pulling a few bits from the development plan just to try and take a couple of examples as to why it matters and how it influences, say, the likes of Mullinavat. So that is a map taken from the current development plan, the 2014 to 2020 development plan, and it shows the settlement boundary for Mullinavat. So Mullinavat, in the settlement hierarchy, is classified as a smaller town or village. And for those towns and villages, we have drawn an outline around what we would call the central area, plus a little bit of room at the edges. So really the core area of Mullinavat. And within the development plan then, we'd have a general policy around encouraging appropriate uses within that development boundary. So really, once you're looking for something within that development boundary, you're in the right place. Now, whether the site specifics will still have to be assessed in detail, but within the development boundary, yeah, we'd be happy to see growth, we'd be happy to see development happening. And that marks a big distinction then between what's outside the development boundary, which just falls within the normal rural area. And Nicholas then will be talking a lot about rural settlement in his presentation. And that just shows you where we are tonight. Now, why does it matter? So just again to try and pull some examples from the development plan to really illustrate its importance. I looked at previous development plans and say two simple objectives that I noticed. One was an objective for the development and completion of the River Nore Linear Park in the city, and another objective going further back in a development plan to complete the development of Scanlon Park. And so both of those have come to fruition. So what happens is an objective makes its way through the policy channels and through the chamber and emerges as a policy in the development plan. That's a firm commitment of council policy. And when somebody is going looking for funding or looking to submit their planning application for the Waterford, we can point to that statement in the development plan and say, yeah, that's an objective of the council in our 6-year plan. It sounds good. And that's just a picture of Ossory Bridge as well there. So to focus in as well, another example would be, this is the wind energy strategy map from the county development plan. And Declan, as I said, will be touching on wind energy, the development of wind energy around the county. So through the development plan process, we have assessed the county and we have divided the county into areas that are either suitable or unsuitable or open for consideration for the development of wind farms. So that's another example of how the shaping of policy in the development plan can then influence applications. So if an application comes in outside of one of those areas, at the moment we'd be saying, no, sorry. Whereas if an application for a wind farm came in one of the green areas there, which is designated as preferred, then in principle it's okay. Obviously all the site specifics will need to be addressed, but in principle our policy has determined, yes, this is a good location for wind energy development. Similarly then, this map relates to the rural housing policy areas, which Nicholas will be talking about later. And again, it's the policy map. The county is divided into 3 areas. Areas under urban influence there in the red. The green is the stronger rural area, and the blue is the area of population decline. And for each of those, there's a different settlement policy. So when an application comes in, the planner first checks to see, well, which policy area does this application come into? So that's just drawing the link between the application, somebody submitting their application for a one-off house, and how the development plan and meetings like this evening would shape the policy that governs that. So moving on then to the process. There's really 3 stages in the making of a development plan. There's stage 1, pre-draft, which is where we're at the moment. So that's what it says on the tin. It's pre-draft. There is no draft plan. We haven't put pen to paper. Okay, we have the current development plans that we will be reviewing, but there actually is no text gone into a new development plan as of yet. So we have published an issues paper which just poses some questions, and we'd really welcome your views on those questions. And some of the issues papers are there on that table there. Feel free to take one home with you to look up, but it's also available on our dedicated website, ourplan.kilkenny.ie. And it's where it just raises some of the questions that we would like to get views on. So once we get all the submissions in, the closing date for submissions, most important date, 15th of June is the closing date for this submissions period, which is the pre-draft submissions period. And we will get all those submissions in, we'll collate them all. We have to summarise the issues raised in those submissions. We then submit that to the Chief Executive for sign-off, so that will give a recommendation on whether we agree with the submission or how those issues raised will be addressed in the development plan. That goes into the chamber. I see a couple of councillors here tonight. So that goes into the chamber for their consideration, and they can then issue us, the executive, with directions. And then putting all of that together, all of the consultation process, all of the directions and engagement from elected members, we come up with a draft plan. And then we're on to stage 2. So same again, we'll have another public consultation period. We'll probably come back out, probably different venues, different locations around the county, but we'll be back out. Inviting submissions again. We will receive, hopefully we'll receive lots of submissions. We'll again summarise the issues raised, another Chief Executive's report, back into the chamber for consideration by members, and then usually at that stage there's what's called material amendments, so it's changes to the draft, and back out again. You get the picture. So just as I said, I can't emphasise this enough. So consultation ends on the 15th of June, and we published the pre-draft issues paper on the 20th of April, and that started the awareness campaign around what we're doing and encouraging people to make submissions. And that included a significant awareness campaign. Dennis was on the radio today. There's been ads in the Kilkenny People, we've had Facebook, we've been tweeting. We've developed the Our Plan website, which is our dedicated development plan website. And then also we put all the content up on our Consult website, which is confusing, but Consult is the portal for all open public submissions periods that the council is running. So it's really important to register with that website, and that way we can keep you informed with the process as it moves along. So that's just the cover from the issues paper. As I said, I'm just going to touch on what issues the issues paper addresses. Briefly, we'd be here all night if we start going into all of them, but as I said, just to emphasise the paper is there and it is online, and we can email it. If anyone has difficulty finding links or anything else, just give your email to one of us and we'll send it on. So there you can see the table of contents, introduction, cross-cutting themes. So those are climate change. So again, Declan's presentation this evening will touch on that. And the chapters there are, as you can see, population, housing, settlement strategy. So that would include the core strategy that I spoke to, economic development and employment, rural development, which Nicholas will speak to tonight. You might be aware that this is the second in 3 meetings, and last week we were in the city and we spoke about tourism, heritage, and totally blank. Retail. Thank you. Retail. So these meetings are not exhaustive, but they're just a flavour of the topics that are to be addressed in the development plan. Oh, if I had only moved on the slide. So the next meeting, the third meeting, if anyone is interested, if you hear of anyone that couldn't make it tonight but would be interested in attending and hearing about the process, the next meeting then is Ballyragget next Tuesday, and economic development and transportation and land use will be discussed there. But anyway, we are audio recording tonight. Hopefully the technology won't fail us like it did last week. We'll put up all the presentations online. They're already up for Kilkenny City's meeting, so you can access everything on our website. Just to say a note, we've published a guide to making a submission. There's copies there. Feel free to take one. It's very straightforward, but it's just a nice little guide for somebody who's never made a submission to a planning policy document before. So again, not to go on about this too much, tonight is about awareness raising, to really encourage anyone who's here tonight to make a submission. You might not want to speak publicly, but if just to put your views down, we have submission forms, or just to send in a submission to any of our through any of our mechanisms, to feed into the whole consultation process and to have your say on policy development so that we get the right policy and the right services at the right location. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Katrina. Just a quick question, very briefly. You mentioned a couple of websites. It's consult.ie.
Yeah.
Is a good website for people to go to, and also the County Council website?
That's correct. So there'd actually be three. There's the standard County Council website, which has a planning section, and it's as under one of the services pages. Then there's our plan, which is the dedicated development plan website. And then the consult website is actually, it's for anything that the council is consulting on, like Part 8s or grants initiatives or anything like that. But the county development plan then forms one of those consultation periods as well. And that's just handy, because if you register with that and you tick the development plan box, then we can send you regular updates of any such meetings, or the reminders about closing dates for submission periods and the like.
Thanks, Katrina. As Katrina mentioned, we had a meeting last week in Kilkenny